Hey guys, Youngblood with you, and this is my first video coming from my new office that I've spent the last few months building, so hopefully the acoustics are a little bit better, but there is actually still a little bit of an echo that I need to address, so that will be done in the near time. Now beyond that though, what I really wanted to do was do a kind of a retrospective view on Xenothreat now that the missions have concluded. Overall, Xenothreat was really our first foray into dynamic events, and while it was a lot of fun, I would say calling it a dynamic event was a little bit of a misnomer in my book. In my mind, what they're really discussing for the next event, which is Ninetales Takeover, is really more dynamic in my book. Now, the reason I feel that this way about the dynamic event is because I feel like dynamic insinuates that it should be something that's triggered as a result of some sort of conditions being met in the universe. Ninetales Takeover is supposed to be a function of crime stat and like character heat in the area, meaning that if there's enough criminals hanging out at a specific location, Ninetales are going to move in and try and begin to set up more of a base of operations there, thus triggering events and contracts to go out to players to come and try and clear out that sector. Now that is taking circumstances in the verse and dynamically spooling up an event, and that feels good. Now, you could almost argue that Xenothreat was a dynamic event in that there was a timer that burned down about 60 minutes or so from the time that the event ended, and then the event respawned. But saying that the timer is the dynamic portion of it, in my mind, is a little bit of a stretch. Now, I also think that having the multiple phases was likely a good test bed for them to be able to learn and collect data about the experience, though it didn't really feel like a complete mission set because they were done in 3 different phases that didn't really run concurrently. By the 3rd phase, it was essentially just the Kill the Idris Arlington Gang mission done on a larger scale, which, if you have many ships engaging, is really done in a matter of minutes. Now, those minutes were very fun, but it's not exactly a big event either. Now, Phase 2 actually was my favorite part of this mission series. Going to the wrecks, offloading the cargo, meeting the conditions necessary to release the Javelin. In a perfect world, I think it should have played out by having the universe trigger the event. Maybe players are trading a commodity that's alien in nature, and then Xenothreat sees that alien life is having more of an influence on the sector of space, so they move in and attack transports, both player and NPC. Then the players get the mission from Jericho to go and defend the ships in need, or maybe go recover the goods. Then as you're recovering the goods, capital ships start to spawn in from Xenothreat. And then you can either opt to deal with the Xeno capital ships on your own, or you can take the missions to rearm the Javelin to get that into the fight, which will get the job done, which also opens up the door for cargo running and combat people to all do things at the same time. If the Javelin is released, great. If it's not needed, that's okay too. So that's kind of how I would say you could take what we did with Xenothreat and almost turn it into more of a true dynamic event. Now, I do realize this was a first attempt at an event like this, and overall, I think it went really well. If you had a Retaliator, this was really its time to shine, because you could bring 2 to 3 torpedoes, and if they ended up landing on the Idris and doing damage, it would end up earning you around 100,000 UEC, so not bad. And that's not to mention the fact that the torpedoes actually landing have a very incredibly satisfying visual look and audio sound to it. It just really, you feel that impact. Now, each of those torpedoes cost you about 3,000 to shoot. It cost you about 20,000 to rearm, but it was a risk worth taking. Now, it was also fun having group combat with people that had the same goal in mind, people that weren't in your party or your organization, just people fighting together. And I did think it was interesting that we didn't actually see a lot of people griefing either. And I think it's because there were decent payouts for contributing. I did hear others that were having griefing taking place, but it wasn't really severe. And I do kind of wish it was a little bit more, there's some more consideration into the punishment. For example, somebody crashed into me. I was flying on a straight line when it happened, so I know what actually happened. But I got aggravated homicide, so I spawned back at Grimhex and then had to deal with a crime stat, and I was essentially out of the fight one time. I didn't go to, I didn't have a major crime stat. I didn't end up in prison, so it wasn't a big deal, but a minor annoyance. Now, even flying around, in a fighter and knocking down the enemy fighters that came in or peppering the Idris was a good time. Even if it was mostly sightseeing and waiting for the torpedoes to land and do the real damage. Though you could end up having more of an impact by bringing distortion weapons to help bring down the shields quicker. Now, I already mentioned out of the waves, the second wave was my favorite and what I found to be the most satisfying, because what I really enjoyed was that EVA experience of getting onto the ship, finding the cargo, doing FPS combat, loading it up, getting back into the MSR, hauling ass back to the Jericho, dropping off the goods. It was a fun way to make money, it felt kind of new, and releasing the Javelin as a result was rewarding. Now, it wasn't all good. Performance-wise, they had to drop the server count by 10 players to make it perform adequately, which was really concerning for 2 reasons. First off, 50 players is already too low on this game to really fill the universe that we're playing in, so dropping down to 40 really kind of sucks. And it's a step in the wrong direction. Secondly, performance still suffered when there were many ships in a certain area, even with the reduced amount of people involved, and it was very clearly on the server side because everybody experienced it at the same time, so it was having a hard time keeping up. I think what that really up against at this point is the fact that technology needs to catch up, and the technology that we know we're waiting on, such as iCache, further server-side OCS improvements, and general just better hardware utilization on their cloud. Those all need to take place to really see big improvements on the game in general, but also for events like this. Until that happens, we're going to be limited in both performance, player count, and likely both at the same time. At the end of the day, though, what we got out of all of this was a new experience that broke up the monotony of missions and trading, gave the player base a good reason to come together. They let you bring in some larger assets like the Idris and the Javelin into the game and get them more involved, and started to develop upon more mission chains that could lead to bigger things. All in all, I view this as a really positive first step, though much more development needed to make it really truly dynamic. And you can tell from the posts that were on Reddit that people were just like, we want more of this. Why did this go away? We weren't ready. This is the best time we had in this game in a long time. So I appreciate you all watching. Stay tuned for more coming soon. Have yourselves a wonderful day, and take care.